Acurx Pharmaceuticals is a publicly held clinical stage biopharmaceutical company developing a new class of antibiotics for infections caused by bacteria that are listed as priority pathogens by the World Health Organization, the CDC, and others, FDA as well. So the CEO, David Luci, is here with me to explain. Now, tell me about your lead antibiotic candidate, because I know it's going to be doing phase 3 clinical trials soon, right?
Yes.
Okay, so talk to me about that candidate and what you expect out of those trials.
Thank you, Jane. It's a really exciting time. We just announced our top-line data on ibezapolstat, our lead antibiotic to treat C. difficile infection. And that data is clinically comparable to the standard of care, vancomycin, and we're going on to phase 3. We'll be meeting with the FDA in the first quarter. The data was phenomenal for ibezapolstat in phase 2. Altogether, the 2A component, 2B component, we were 25 out of 26 cures, 96.15%. In the phase 2B, oral vanc did better than it usually does. It got 14 out of 14 patients, but looked at within the context of their 37 years of data, 2,000 patients that we have evaluated, they have an average cure rate of 85.5%. So with that in mind, and with Merck's fidaxomicin at 88%, both of which have a lot of reinfections, and we have none, we're really excited to be moving on. We have a robust package to move to phase 3.
Yeah, I always remember the first time we talked about this, you talked about how there hasn't been anything to treat the C. diff in decades, and it just seems like it's kind of been just sitting there as a problem, and nobody's really done anything about it until you came along.
Yeah, it's true, and you know, a lot of big companies fell by the wayside. Recently, Pfizer had a vaccine for frontline therapy. They projected it to be a $1.05 billion opportunity. We agree with those numbers for frontline for C. diff, and they failed phase 3. Sanofi failed phase 3. Finch went by the wayside. Summit Therapeutics failed phase 3. So we literally are the next antibiotic up to bat with the FDA. There's no one closer to FDA approval than us in the C. diff space, and we're going into phase 3. And not only are we going into phase 3 with the FDA, we're going to leverage all of the time and money and effort, the preclinical and clinical package, and after we meet the FDA, we're going to leverage that data and we're going to go to the European Medicines Agency.
Okay, interesting. Now, Acurx is a NASDAQ company, but it is a microcap stock. How do you pay for those expensive phase 3 trials?
Well, what we're going to do is have an imbalanced approach to the 2 phase 3s that will be required. We'll do a smaller study first, possibly 2-to-1 randomized, so that for every 2 patients on our ibezapolstat, there'll be 1 patient on vancomycin. Vancomycin will be the control arm, but it will be a smaller study so that we can pay for it more easily. So we think that we have a strategy that we will unveil in the coming weeks that people will see that it will be the most non-dilutive way to fund phase 3 of all the ways that I've done in my 25 years doing this.
Now, do you think that's what's been behind your stock price, which has been shot up 70%, down a little bit? I mean, do you think the concern about paying for it that's what's behind this?
I think there's concern about paying for it, which we're not concerned about at all. We have a detailed plan that we'll be unveiling very soon. And I also think that when people saw 14 out of 14 patients for vancomycin in the phase 2B, they were looking at it incorrectly, like maybe it wasn't a win. But if you talk to our institutional investors who know the context of all of the vanco data, it actually was a tremendous win. Our institutions are quite delighted with where we are. Yeah. And I will add that fidaxomicin went to phase 3 on an open label study with 15 out of 16 cures. We have 25 out of 26. Yeah. So we're delighted with where we are.
More comprehensive
Absolutely.
study, it sounds like. So,
absolutely.
Now, this vancomycin.
Yes.
Right. Okay, it was approved in 1986?
To treat C. difficile, yes. Originally approved in 1958, but for C. diff in 1986.
Got it. And it has a high reoccurrence rate, right?
30% recurrence rate.
Okay. And that's just exactly the problem that you're trying to address.
Exactly. And I think that high recurrence rate and the fact that it's a broad spectrum antibiotic, which destroys the microbiome, I think that's why Pfizer and Sanofi wanted to knock it off as frontline therapy in a $1.7 billion market, because they had a vulnerable frontline therapy to beat.
Okay. Now, you just said $1.7 billion market. So how big could this C. diff treatment be?
Well, if the data continues with the characteristics we've seen so far in phase 3, we agree with the Pfizer CFO, who's in Fierce Biotech and identified it as over $1 billion product.
Okay. Well, David, please keep us up to date on this, because I know you're entering this crucial phase for the treatment, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much. We have a lot of data coming out in the next 90 days, and stay tuned. I hope to give you an update.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.